We're just going to look at one more issue before we take a break, and that's what's happening on our website, which we put a lot of work into over the past 6-7 months. And most recently, we've launched a blog, which we call the Creative Communities blog. And it's chaired by Betsy Donald, who's a professor in, Dr. Betsy Donald, who's a professor in the Faculty of Geography. And she has a couple of great PhD students working as well, Heather and Claire. And so I'm going to hand it over to them.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Jeff, and thanks everybody for being here. We're just here as a sort of advertisement to tell you a little bit about our community creative communities blog. So essentially, as Jeff mentioned, I'm a professor in geography and I teach regional economic development. Last year we had a very successful project where we worked with the CFDC Pella Institute, and the whole class did a project on Prince Edward County. Many of you might have seen that report on the rural creative economy. And since then we've been doing a lot of other reports on, Heather and I did a recent report for the Martin Prosperity Institute out of the University of Toronto on Northern Ontario's challenges in regional economic development, and I also did one on the food industry in Ontario as well. So we're basically just getting this off the ground, and we're trying to get some ideas we're trying to be the think tank for rural economic development in the world. So we've just started, but we obviously have a long way to go, but we're welcoming your input, and I'm going to pass it on to Heather to give you a bit more of a presentation. And as Jeff mentioned, I'm very fortunate to have these outstanding doctoral students who are both interested in regional economic development, Heather and Claire.
So basically, Claire and I had passed out some sheets of paper, and if you didn't get one by any chance, if you have a scrap of paper, if any blog ideas come to mind during our presentation, we encourage you to jot them down and then give them to us at the end so we can have that list and use them for our future discussions online. So just basically, we're going to do a brief introduction, give you a little bit more detail about who we are, then we'll give you an overview of the blog. We'll look at what we feel is the purpose, the mandate, and the goals. We're going to get into some of the blog topics, and we're going to look at some of the past examples that we've already written about in the last 2 months since we've launched it. And then we're going to give you some direction on where we'd like to go in the future with some of the topics. Then by that point, hopefully you're all encouraged and excited and do want to participate in the blog. But if you're still not sure, we're going to give you some opportunities that we think are beneficial for both the community and for academics. And then we'll show you how you can get involved yourself with the blog. So as Betsy already introduced herself, she's an associate professor. Her research interests quite broad, cities in the new economy, local regional development, and the political and cultural economy of food. Recent projects that she's been leading include the Kingston Innovation Study, which is spearheaded out of the University of Toronto's Innovation Systems Research Network. And she just finished a large working paper on the Ontario food sector for the Martin Prosperity Institute. And this was for a larger project for the Premier that was spearheaded by Richard Florida and Roger Martin, called Ontario in the Creative Age. I'm Heather. I'm a second-year PhD student in geography. I have an MA in planning from the University of Waterloo. My research interests are in planning and economic development in slow growth and declining cities and regions. Most of my research focuses on Northern Ontario. I've done work in communities as small as Cobalt, Ontario, if any of you are familiar with that town, and as large as Sudbury. And I just finished the report, like Betsy was mentioning, on Northern Ontario, looking at innovation and creativity there, as well as some challenges and opportunities for the Martin Prosperity Institute. And I think there's a lot of similarities between Northern Ontario and Eastern Ontario that I hope to be able to bring to the table and make some connections to see maybe there are some lessons that we can learn from these two regions.
I know many of you from my position with the Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs, where I've been for the last 10 years. I was program lead for community economic analysis and involved with a lot of rural communities, developing tools and resources and implementing, I think we could call them creative strategic planning processes to identify opportunities and then to work through community-based processes to develop realistic economic development plans. I also have a graduate degree in rural planning and development from the University of Guelph, and my research interests are creative economies, particularly creative food economies, alternative food networks. And I just presented a paper on that in Las Vegas about the creative food economy in Prince Edward County, which was fascinating to research and wonderful to talk about, actually. The other area is sustainable development, sustainable transport, and that's in both urban and rural communities. I'm particularly interested as well in creative leadership and what are those things that develop a critical mass of awareness, intelligence, strategies, and so on that transform communities to be sustainable and vibrant and resilient.
And so I think we're all quite familiar now with the mandate of the KISS project, and I think it's a really unique opportunity to kind of bridge academia and practitioners, and for Eastern Ontario, it's really the strong link to kind of increase rural economic vitality here. And I think we've seen quite a few examples of the channels that are now open, especially on the Eastern Ontario Knowledge website. And if you haven't been there, I encourage you to do so. It has a wealth of information, including the knowledge syntheses that we heard about, and local success stories, case studies, and business how-to documents. And one of the newer initiatives is the Creative Communities blogs. And we feel that this is a unique opportunity because it provides this opportunity for two-way conversation. Many of the other resources are basically one way. It's people posting these documents, whereas the blog allows you to kind of connect with us and provide comments on things that we're writing and working on. And so essentially what we're doing with the Creative Economy blog is what we do, Claire and I and Betsy from time to time, on an alternating weekly basis, we'll create an entry. Usually they're quite short. We try to keep them to about 500 words. And then sometimes we like to attach some think tank pieces by various practitioners from North America and across the world. The topics that we do want to discuss and that we've been discussing for the past couple of months include economic development challenges and opportunities in Eastern Ontario. We've also been looking at recent success stories, issues facing smaller rural communities, as well as strategies for entrepreneurship, development, business retention, creative economies, community resilience, and revitalization. And we always try to keep on top of what's happening in the policy world and what's going on at the provincial and federal level, and trying to get that into our blogs as well. And Claire has, on one opportunity, been able to provide some material from a leading expert on rural development and provide those perspectives and examples. We also have a discussion forum by another PhD student in geography, Nathaniel Lewis. And basically anyone can go and post a topic for discussion. Nathaniel is also looking through national news media, trying to come up with topics that he can bring to that forum. So some of our past topics that we've discussed, our first blog was looking at the new Southern Ontario Development Agency, or SODA as it's being called, and what this means for Eastern Ontario. So what we really wanted to see was some feedback from practitioners on whether they thought SODA was going to present some new opportunities for the region, or whether it's going to present some significant challenges, and whether Eastern Ontario issues are going to be overshadowed by Southwestern and GTA issues. And so we wanted to try and stimulate some discussion on that new agency.
The second one we did was on the federal stimulus package, and we're fortunate to have Mike Stolte, who's the Executive Director of the Centre for Innovative and Entrepreneurial Leadership in Nelson, BC, and he's quite willing to contribute his opinions. He loves to write, and he had some reaction to that. And what he was basically saying was that what the stimulus package did not include was support for entrepreneurship. And so he's suggesting, and I would support this, that there needs to be emphasis and support for rural communities, for entrepreneurs in those communities, and to have very practical methods of enhancing, taking what's already there and building on it. So that was the topic of his blog. And I want to mention that if there's anybody else, I know there are some opinionated, I'm looking around the room, and I can see opinionated people who would love to contribute to the blog in that way, a bit of a think piece. Please get in touch with me, because that's an opportunity.
And we recently just finished a blog on the A-channel cuts in Pembroke, and the question we posed for that blog was whether or not small communities are the first to pay the price in economic downturns. And so we wanted to see, there's an era where we have multinational companies and national companies with offices spread throughout the country, where are the first cuts felt? And I think